The seconds are out. The crowd is waiting. The boxers are getting ready to battle. Time for another edition of the Shoulder Roll Virtual Boxing Podcast with your presenter, Greg Rashid.
Swadee Kra, this is Greg Rashid with another edition of the Shoulder Roll Virtual Boxing Podcast. Heard at your convenience on various platforms, but a lot of folks listen every Sunday afternoon at 3 p.m. Mountain Time on KUHSdenver.com, created by the one and only Henry Archuleta. And I hope you are having a great day. And if you listen to this program on, I believe it's Father's Day in America, happy Father's Day. And we're going to have, as always, a great show on here. And I know if you're listening, you're a boxing aficionado. You love boxing. But if you're new to the program, what we do on this program is we do fantasy fights where we imagine what would happen to Muhammad Ali for Mike Tyson. And we use card and dice games, computer games, a little bit of everything, mix them up, and create these fantasy fights. And also what we do is that we talk about current news in the world of boxing. We have a debate section. We also talk about boxing history. And at the end, we do a little music. And that's why I call it a boxing variety show. And today's fight is going to be Roy Jones Jr. in the light heavyweight division versus James Scott. And the fight was created by Title Belt 2 PC game created by Jim Trunza. And I know some of you are saying, well, who was James Scott? Well, James Scott and Straight Right Ray will talk more about James Scott when he does the commentary. But James Scott, he was in the late 70s, early 80s, ranked as high as number 2 in the light heavyweight division as far as challenging for the title. But there was one little caveat. James Scott was at Rahway State Prison in New Jersey, and the powers that be did not want the potential light heavyweight champion of the world to be a prisoner, a convict. And he was in prison for life at the time because he had committed murder. And so it was fascinating, but he created this whole boxing program in Rahway, and it was something that attracted a lot of attention. And Straight Right Ray will talk more about it. We're going to get to the fight right now. So sit back, get your favorite beverage, and relax as we listen to Straight Right Ray talking about the fight between Roy Jones Jr. and James Scott on the Shoulder Roll Virtual Boxing Podcast.
The popcorn is popping. The fighters are bopping. Hi, this is Straight Right Ray, coming to you live from the most unusual venue in boxing history. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Rahway State Prison in New Jersey, where the echoes of steel bars and concrete walls mix with the roar of a very special crowd. We're inside these walls for a light heavyweight showdown that the world is watching. Seating here is limited to just 450 souls. And get this, about 90% of them are prisoners themselves. The rest? Media folks and ring officials. This isn't just a fight. It's a global broadcast from behind prison walls, bringing the sweet science straight into living rooms around the planet. The tension is thick enough to cut with a shank. I mean, a knife. Let's get into the histories of these two warriors. First, the challenger in the blue corner, James Scott. Born in 1947, this tough-as-nails light heavyweight has lived a story straight out of a movie. A convicted felon serving time right here at Rahway, Scott turned his cell block into a training ground. He became the prison boxing champion and fought half his professional bouts, 11 out of 22, right inside these walls. With 19 wins, 10 by knockout, and a reputation as a body-punching machine, Scott climbed all the way to the number 2 contender spot in the WBA rankings while locked up. He's a gritty, orthodox fighter who knows how to work the inside, wear opponents down, and make them pay for every mistake. Today, in his own backyard, he's looking to prove that even prison bars can't hold back a real fighter's dream. And in the red corner, the pound-for-pound legend, Roy Jones Jr. From Pensacola, Florida, this man is one of the greatest to ever lace up gloves. Starting as a junior middleweight, Captain Hook has captured world titles across 4 divisions: middleweight, super middleweight, light heavyweight, and even heavyweight. An Olympic silver medalist in 1988, Jones turned pro in 1989 and became undisputed light heavyweight champ from 1999 to 2002. With blinding speed, thunderous power, and that signature flashy style, hands down, shoulder rolls, and counters that come out of nowhere, he's a boxing genius. Over 60 wins, dozens by knockout, and moments that redefine the sport. Roy Jones Jr. is fighting in one of the strangest atmospheres imaginable, but he's here to remind everyone why he's considered one of the best ever. This is history in the making, folks. A free world superstar stepping into the lion's den at Rahway for an international audience. The prisoners are on their feet, the atmosphere electric. Let's get ready to rumble. Round 1. The bell sounds and we're underway. James Scott comes out aggressive, trying to work that body like he always does, looking to set up shop in close quarters. Roy Jones Jr. is in that defensive shell early, slick as ever, slipping and moving. Scott is in control here, circling, trying to find his range in this tight prison ring. Scott misses a jab, clinches up. He's moving around, establishing position. They're in the center now. Scott misses a cross, then an uppercut. Jones tries a counter jab, but it doesn't land clean. Now Jones starts to find his rhythm. He throws a combination, but misses. Scott's counter hook sails wide. Roy Jones Jr. is taking over. He lands a solid cross that gets through partially, then another clean cross right down the pipe. The crowd is buzzing, but Scott fires back with a hook that connects nicely. Jones misses a jab as Scott regains control, landing a hard cross that snaps Jones' head back near the end. Jones answers with a sharp jab right before the bell. A very even first round, both men landing clean shots. This prison fight is living up to the hype. Round 2. Scott starts strong again, clinching early and moving to establish position. They're trading in center ring. Scott misses an uppercut and a couple combinations, but then, boom! A big hook from Scott lands flush. Roy Jones Jr. is cut over the left eye. A little blood in this prison yard brawl. Scott keeps pressing with more missed combinations, but Jones counters with a hook. Suddenly, Jones unloads and scores big. Scott's knees buckle from the power. The prisoners are yelling. Scott regains control with a solid jab, but Jones is right back, missing a cross as they exchange. Scott lands a partially blocked jab and another hook. Jones answers, and both men get warned for dirty tactics. Then Roy explodes with a combination that rocks Scott badly, almost down, sent stumbling into the far ropes. The roar from 450 voices is deafening. Jones follows with an uppercut and another combination right at the bell. What a round for Roy Jones Jr. He's turning this prison fight into his personal highlight reel. Round 3. Scott tries to press, missing a combination, but Jones takes over immediately. A hard cross from Roy gets Scott's attention. Then a hook that nearly drops him, knocking Scott into the far ropes. Jones cuts off the ring beautifully, pinning him in the near corner. Jab, combination, partially blocked uppercut, cross, another combination, uppercut. Jones is pouring it on. Another cross snaps Scott's head. Jones has him pinned in the left neutral corner now. More jabs and combinations from the master. Scott tries to clinch late and lands a final uppercut, but this round belongs to Roy Jones Jr. He's dominating in this unlikely venue. Round 4. Back to action in this concrete cauldron, and the tension is rising with every tick of the clock. James Scott starts strong, stalking forward and landing a sharp cross that echoes through the prison gym. The prisoners are hollering encouragement to their man. They're in center ring now, trading space, but Scott follows up with a stinging uppercut that snaps Roy's head back. Roy Jones Jr. fires back with a crisp jab and begins using his legs, circling and trying to cut off the ring. He pins Scott in the near corner for a moment, but Scott slips away and the fighters meet again in the center. Scott misses a big combination and a jab, but he's moving well, dictating the geography of this tight ring. Roy tries to establish position himself, dancing around, but Scott explodes with a heavy hook that lands clean and forces Jones to respect the power. Another clinch, more movement, and Scott closes the round strong with a solid cross right before the bell. The home fighter edges this one, and the prisoners are loving every second of this back-and-forth war. Round 5. Round 5 underway, and the atmosphere inside Rahway is absolutely electric. You can feel the walls vibrating from the shouts. James Scott comes out aggressive, landing a powerful cross early that clearly gets Roy Jones Jr.'s attention and backs him up. The prisoners erupt. Roy answers quickly with a sharp jab, but Scott is relentless, clinching repeatedly to slow down that legendary speed, missing combinations while expertly pinning Jones against the right neutral corner. The pressure is mounting. Scott keeps tying him up, trying to grind down the pound-for-pound great in front of this captive crowd. Roy finally breaks free and counters with a beautiful uppercut. Late in the round, Jones turns the tables, taking control with stinging jabs, a hook, another hook, and a clean cross that lands flush. The international audience must be on the edge of their seats watching this prison brawl unfold. What a gritty seesaw round. Round 6. Sixth round in the Lion's Den, and both men are still fresh enough to make magic happen. Roy Jones Jr. is in firm control early, pumping out jabs and using his superior footwork to pin James Scott against the near ropes multiple times. The crowd senses danger for their man. Roy lands another crisp jab and continues cutting off the ring beautifully. A partially blocked hook lands, but he misses a couple crosses. Then, boom! A heavy combination from Jones buckles Scott's knees. The prisoners groan but stay loud. Scott fires right back with fury, landing a thunderous uppercut that buckles Roy's knees in return. The entire venue explodes. This is pure chaos inside Rahway. Clinches, movement, center ring exchanges, and missed combinations keep the tension sky high. Roy closes the round strong with another combination and a hard cross. Incredible heart from both warriors in this unforgettable setting. Round 7. Seventh round, and the fight is reaching a boiling point. The prisoners are stomping and chanting as James Scott comes out like a man possessed, landing a crisp combination. He follows with a massive hook that nearly drops Roy Jones Jr. into the near ropes. The roar is deafening. Scott pours it on with hard crosses and hooks, putting serious pressure on the legend. Roy shows his championship heart, countering with sharp uppercuts and jabs, but Scott keeps landing the heavier shots. Jones rallies late with combinations and hooks of his own, moving well in spots. Scott circles and clinches to close it out. What a round for the home fighter! The energy in this prison gym is something I'll never forget. Round 8, and Roy Jones Jr. is back on the hunt. He starts fast with combinations and slick movement, pinning Scott on the near ropes and unloading thunderous uppercuts that buckle those knees again. The international broadcast is capturing every moment of this drama. Scott fights back with a big uppercut of his own, but Roy keeps the pressure high with more uppercuts and crosses. Another combination rocks Scott badly. Knees buckling once more. Clinches follow, with warnings for excessive holding and a low blow on Scott late. Roy's precision and volume are shining through in this hostile environment, but Scott refuses to go away quietly. Ninth round, and the wear and tear is starting to show on both faces under these harsh lights. James Scott opens with a partially blocked combination. Roy counters effectively with his own block combo, then lands clean uppercuts and multiple crosses that back Scott up. The momentum swings again as Scott lands heavy hooks and crosses, including a beauty that snaps Roy's head. More hooks and another cross from Scott keep the pressure on, though he misses a couple late. A final clinch ends the round. Tense, tactical warfare with plenty of leather being traded in front of this roaring prison crowd. Round 10. 10th round. We're deep into championship territory now, and the tension inside Rahway State Prison is thick enough to cut with a blade. Roy Jones Jr. circles and cuts off the ring masterfully, pinning Scott on the far ropes and landing combinations and hooks that get his full attention. The legend is imposing his will. Warnings fly for holding and hitting as they clash in center ring. Roy continues with uppercuts and jabs that land clean. Scott finally answers with a solid cross late, but Jones is clearly sharper, moving and dictating the action. Another clinch closes this pivotal round. Roy Jones Jr. is making a statement in this most unusual venue. Round 11. We're into the championship rounds in this concrete cauldron, and the prisoners are absolutely losing their minds. The energy in here is feral. Shouts, stomps, and raw tension bouncing off every wall. Roy Jones Jr. starts the round trying to dictate with that slick movement, but he misses a big uppercut early. Scott slips a counter hook and suddenly flips the script. James Scott explodes into control, cutting off the ring like a predator and pinning Roy Jones Jr. against the near ropes. The crowd erupts as Scott unleashes a partially blocked combination, then lands a clean, heavy combo that visibly stuns Roy. Jones's legs tremble for a split second as the prisoners roar like it's a riot. Scott is relentless, smelling blood in this prison yard. He lands a stinging jab that sets up another massive combination. Roy almost goes down, sent reeling across the ring and crashing into the far ropes. The entire venue shakes with the noise. Scott pins him again on the far ropes, firing a hard cross, another cross that rocks Jones's head back, and the prisoners are chanting Scott's name. Roy looks stunned twice in this round, absorbing serious punishment from the home fighter. Jones tries to rally late, landing a sharp jab and tying Scott up in a clinch, but he's missing uppercuts and crosses as Scott keeps the pressure high. In the final seconds, Scott lands one last clean cross that snaps Roy's head, a massive statement in front of his fellow inmates. What a round for James Scott. He stole the spotlight in dramatic fashion inside these walls. Final round in Rahway State Prison. The atmosphere is electric and dangerous. 450 voices screaming as one, the air thick with sweat, tension, and history. James Scott comes out like a man with everything to prove, landing a heavy combination right away. Then, boom! A crushing uppercut from Scott drops Roy Jones Jr. to the canvas. The prison erupts in absolute bedlam. Roy beats the count at 6, but the legend is hurt and Scott is swarming. Scott pours it on with another combination, uppercuts, and a stinging jab. He's trying to finish this right here in his own backyard. Roy circles away and tries to find range, but misses an uppercut. Scott keeps pressing, pinning him on the far ropes again, though he misses a hook. Then a hard cross lands flush on Roy. That one definitely got his attention as the prisoners go wild once more. Roy fights back with heart, but gets warned for a low blow. He's moving, trying to establish position in center ring, but missing combinations and crosses as fatigue sets in. Scott keeps coming forward. In the dying seconds, Roy lands one final defiant hook, but this round, and much of the late fight, belong to the heart of James Scott. The bell sounds to end an absolute war. The fighters embrace in the center of the ring as the prisoners give both men a thunderous ovation. This was boxing at its rawest, broadcast to the world from behind prison walls. The judges have delivered their verdict. Daeun Chung scores it 115 to 110, Eddie Cotton 114 to 111, and Michael Griffin 113 to 112. All three for the winner by unanimous decision, Roy Jones Jr. There are some boos. The folks wanted their man, James Scott, to win, which is understandable. Roy Jones Jr. survived the Lion's Den and gets the nod, but James Scott proved he belongs with the very best in one of the most unforgettable nights in boxing history. What a fight! This is Straight Right Ray signing off from Rahway State Prison, returning you to our Bangkok studios. Peace.
Man, I thought Roy Jones was going to lose that fight. I thought he was going to be knocked out in the 12th round. That was exciting. That was really a good fight there. And I could see, given Roy's propensity to, his jaw as he got older, got a little weak as he became light heavyweight champion, got a little weaker as exposed by Glenn Johnson and Antonio Tarver and other folks. So I could see that happening. I hope you enjoyed that fight on the Shoulder Roll virtual boxing podcast, and that was created using Title Bout 2, the PC game created by Jim Trunza. And I forgot to mention earlier that if you're new to the program also, I'm live in Thailand, having a ball. And I hope you're having a ball wherever you are. And again, I want to say Happy Father's Day to those celebrating Father's Day in America and in other places. But anyway, we're going to get right now to Felicia. And she's going to give you the boxing history for this week. And after that, Malcolm and Ella are going to have a debate about, I can't believe they're going to do this, but they're doing it anyway, about the merits of if Muhammad Ali really is the greatest, if he was technically a very unsound fighter. So we're going to hear the history first, and then we'll hear what they have to say on the Shoulder Roll Virtual Boxing Podcast.
Hi there, my wonderful boxing family. Oh, it warms my heart every single time I get to slide into your ears like this. You all are the reason I wake up smiling, my dedicated listeners who love the sweet science as much as I do. Whether you're shadowboxing in your kitchen or listening while you drive to the gym, I'm sending you all the biggest virtual hugs and left hooks of love. This is your girl Felicia, coming through with another dose of boxing history for the week of June 21st through June 27th. Let's step back in time and celebrate the legends who made this sport unforgettable. Starting on June 21st, 2011, the ageless wonder Bernard Hopkins proved that Father Time apparently took one look at him and said, "Nah, I'm good." At 46 years young, Hopkins became the oldest boxer in history to win a world championship. And get this, he wasn't done. He came back like a fine wine, or maybe a stubborn mule, to break his own record in 2013 at 48, and again in 2014 at 49. While most guys his age were complaining about their knees during bingo night, B-Hop was still collecting belts. Talk about aging like a championship vintage. On June 22nd, 1993, we saw a classic passing of the torch moment when a young Roy Jones Jr. outclassed Bernard Hopkins to snatch the vacated IBF middleweight title. Yes, the same Hopkins. It's like the student showing the teacher a few new tricks, except in this case, the teacher would later go on to defy time itself. Roy was smooth, flashy, and unstoppable that night. Boxing fans still argue about that one over their morning coffee. June 23rd, 1981, belongs to the pride of Puerto Rico, Wilfred Benitez. He became the first Hispanic and Puerto Rican fighter to win world titles in 3 different weight classes by defeating Maurice Hope. Imagine the celebration in the streets that night. Flags waving, music blasting, and Benitez dancing like he just invented the cha-cha. 3-division champ at such a young age. The man was a prodigy with hands quicker than my auntie dodging family gossip. Fast forward, or backward, to June 24th, 1968, when Bob Foster stepped into the ring and knocked out Dick Tiger to claim the world light heavyweight title. Foster was a beast with a punch like a sledgehammer and the heart of a champion. Light heavyweights don't always get the spotlight, but nights like this reminded everyone they can steal the show and leave jaws on the floor. Now, June 25th, 1965. Buckle up, because this one's wild. Muhammad Ali faced Sonny Liston for the second time in what many still call the most controversial fight in boxing history. That famous phantom punch had people screaming, "Fix, miracle, or magic." Ali was dancing, talking, and dominating while the world tried to figure out what even happened. Liston on the canvas, Ali yelling, "Get up!" Pure theatre, pure greatness. Some fights aren't just fights, they're legends being born in real time. June 26, 1972, saw the unstoppable Joe Frazier defending his world heavyweight crown with a brutal 5-round knockout over Ron Stander. Smokin' Joe came in breathing fire, and by the time the ref waved it off, Stander probably felt like he'd gone 10 rounds with a freight train. Frazier's pressure and power were something else. Watching him fight was like watching a storm roll in and refuse to leave until the job was done. And rounding out the week on June 27th, 1719, we go way back to the bare-knuckle era, when James Figg became the first recognised English bare-knuckle boxing champion. No gloves, no mercy, just fists, grit, and probably a few missing teeth by the end of the night. These old-school warriors were built different. Figg wasn't just fighting opponents, he was fighting for the entire future identity of the sport. Respect to the OGs who did it with nothing but heart and knuckles. Phew! What a week full of history, heart, and a little bit of chaos. My dear boxing fans, my beloved listeners who make every episode feel like home, I hope these stories lit a fire in your soul and put a smile on your face. Keep training, keep loving this beautiful, brutal sport, and remember, the legends came before us so we could dream even bigger. This is your girl Felicia, signing off with all my love and a reminder to throw one more jab for me today. Stay strong, stay inspired, and I'll catch you next time.
Welcome to the debate. Think for a second about military engineering. If you're designing a tank, there's a pretty fundamental blueprint you follow, right?
Right. Heavy steel, tracks.
Exactly. You need heavy armor, a low center of gravity, redundant defensive systems. It's slow, but it's impenetrable. But imagine someone comes along and says, I'm not doing that. I'm going to strip off all the heavy armor, narrow the wheelbase, and drop a Formula One engine inside.
Most traditional engineers would call that a structural death trap.
They would, but on the battlefield, that vehicle moves so fast that it never gets hit.
Right, until the engine inevitably slows down, and then you're just sitting in a tin can waiting for the artillery.
Spot on. And that tension between traditional armored defense and rule-breaking high-speed evasion, that's exactly what we're untangling today. Specifically, we're applying this to the boxing technique of Muhammad Ali.
It is such a fascinating topic. We're looking at this through the lens of sports biomechanics, historical fight records, and the accounts of legendary trainers.
Now, if you're listening to this, you might be thinking, wait a minute. How can we possibly debate whether Muhammad Ali was structurally flawed? I mean, he's universally considered the greatest.
But my position today is that Ali's radical departure from orthodox mechanics was actually a demonstration of a transcendent, bespoke biomechanical genius.
And I take the opposing view. Ali's competitive success is, undeniable. But we have to separate his historical greatness from his technical soundness. His mechanics inherently violated the foundational invariance of combat. You're saying he relied on his physical gifts?
Entirely. He relied on anomalous 1 in a billion sensory processing. And when those physical attributes faded, those structural flaws exposed him to catastrophic damage.
Let's set the baseline here. If you walk into any boxing gym in the world on day one, they teach you the textbook stance. Establish a low center of gravity. Keep a constant bend in your knees and hold a tight, high guard.
Hands glued to the cheekbones.
Right. Chin tucked down, elbows pinned to your ribs.
And it's the standard for a reason. It is a closed-loop defensive system.
Hold on, let's clarify that term for the audience. What exactly do you mean by closed loop?
Sure. Think of a closed-loop system like a passive shield. If I'm in a tight, high guard, my shoulders and gloves are creating a physical barrier. If my reflexes completely fail, say I don't see the punch coming, that punch is still probably going to crash into my glove.
So the defense works independently of your reaction time.
Precisely. Ali, on the other hand, relied entirely on open-loop defensive maneuvers.
Meaning it relies on a split-second reaction, like a quick-time event in a video game.
Yes. Dropping your hands, crossing your feet while moving laterally, pulling your head straight back. Those are objective technical errors because they offer zero redundant protection. If your brain is a microsecond slow, there is no glove there to save you.
I hear that. But looking at the tape, what fascinated me is that his deviations weren't just him being lazy. They were highly calculated adaptations. Take his posture, for example.
The straight legs.
Yeah.
Traditionalists say you need that bent knee crouch. Ali stood almost entirely upright. On paper, sure, it looks like a mistake. But biomechanically, it is an energetic masterclass.
Holding a bent knee posture requires continuous isometric contraction.
It drains your cardiovascular tank.
Exactly. Your quads and glutes are constantly firing just to hold you up. But by straightening his legs, Ali transferred his mass directly through his skeletal structure. His bones were supporting his weight, not his muscles.
Right, you save energy, but you sacrifice stability.
But look at the trade-off. He drastically lowered his static friction with the canvas. That's exactly how a heavyweight danced for 15 grueling rounds without his legs giving out.
The energy conservation makes total sense, but you're pairing that upright stance with his most glaring habit, carrying his hands at his waist.
But is it an error if it's an intentional mechanism? His low guard served a huge functional purpose. By dropping his hands, he lowered his upper body center of mass. His arms acted like physical counterweights, which let him pivot and glide seamlessly.
I mean, you can pivot well, but your face is completely open.
Well, let's talk about vision. A traditional high guard actually obscures your own peripheral vision. You're basically looking through a narrow window between your gloves. Ali maximized his visual data to feed that insane reaction time. Plus, offensively, his low guard acted like a stealth bomber.
A stealth bomber?
Yeah, it completely hit his offensive launch pad. His famous flicker jab rose straight from his hip. It came from entirely beneath his opponent's peripheral vision. Human eyes are trained to look at the opponent's shoulders to see a punch start, right?
Right, you watch the shoulders.
So Ali's jab was already halfway to your face before it even entered your field of view. You can't block what you don't see coming.
I actually read that completely differently. Yes, a low guard opens up your vision, and it allows for a deceptive jab. But we go back to the reality of combat. You are stripping away the armor, and we have historical evidence that the greatest tacticians saw right through this.
You're talking about Eddie Futch.
I am. Futch was the mastermind behind Joe Frazier's strategy in the 1971 fight of the century. He spent hours studying film and noticed a very specific mechanical flaw created by that low guard.
The parrying habit?
Exactly. Because Ali carried his hands at his hips, he had to bring them up a long way to defend. Whenever an opponent threw a jab, Ali would reach out with his right hand to swat it away.
Reaching to catch the punch rather than just, slipping it?
Yes. And Futch realized that when Ali reached wide to parry the jab, he naturally pulled his right shoulder away from his face. It left a massive structural void on the left side of his jaw.
Oh, wow. So there's absolutely nothing there to protect him.
Nothing. So Futch drilled Frazier relentlessly. He told him, throw the jab, let Ali reach for it, and the moment he does, drop under his sight line and throw a leaping left hook directly into that void.
Which led to one of the most famous punches in boxing history.
Round 15. Frazier drops him with a thunderous left hook. That wasn't just a lucky punch. It was the exploitation of an objective mechanical flaw. Ken Norton did the exact same thing to Ali later on. Letting that hand drift out is a structural error that got him hurt.
That is a brilliant piece of tactical history. Futch was an absolute genius. But I'd argue that getting caught by a perfectly timed bespoke strategy from one of the greatest left hookers ever doesn't invalidate Ali's entire defensive matrix.
It proves the system is invincible.
No system is, because if his hands are down and his face is exposed, it forces him into another habit traditionalists hate, but I think is his greatest trick, the linear pullback.
The cardinal sin of boxing.
Right. Textbook orthodoxy says you never ever pull your head straight back on a linear plane. Because if the punch is long enough, you run right into the end of it, where force is maximized. You're supposed to slip laterally.
Which goes back to the closed-loop system. If I slip left and I misjudge your speed, the punch glances over my shoulder.
Exactly. But Ali didn't just casually lean backward out of panic. He used the linear pull-away as a highly calibrated baited trap. He would intentionally lean forward at the waist to manipulate distance.
Tricking them into thinking they're in range.
Yes. The opponent's brain says he's right there and they commit their full body weight. At the exact millisecond they release the punch, Ali snaps his head straight back.
Trusting entirely in his internal radar and neck speed.
But look at the physics of the result. The opponent is now completely overextended. Their momentum carries them forward into empty space, throwing them totally off balance. And because Ali moved away from the punch, he absorbed zero residual impact force.
It's flashy, I'll give you that.
It directly set up his most famous and honestly most confusing offensive weapon, the anchor punch against Sonny Liston in their 1965 rematch.
The Phantom Punch.
People called it the Phantom Punch, but it was pure mechanics. Liston lunged forward, throwing a massive left. Ali stepped back slightly, kept his right arm down by his side, and then just snapped it upward diagonally into Liston's jaw.
Just a flick of the wrist.
Basically a cross-counter turning into a shovel hook. But by catching Liston as he was actively lunging forward, Ali weaponized Liston's own mass. It essentially doubled the impact of the blow. The lore is that he learned the timing from Stephen Fetchit, who got it from Jack Johnson. It was a physical manipulation of momentum.
I have to stop you there, because the anchor punch is the perfect example of why this style is problematic. That punch was so visually confusing and so mechanically anomalous that it sparked decades of mafia conspiracy theories.
Oh, right. People thought Liston took a dive.
Thousands of people in the arena didn't even see the punch land. They thought Liston threw the fight to pay off mob debts because the punch lacked traditional rotational torque. It didn't look like a knockout blow.
But physics tells us it was. It's just velocity and collision geometry.
Sure. In that specific microsecond, with his 23-year-old reflexes, it worked. But we have to look at the macro implication of the linear pullback. It is fundamentally unsustainable.
Because of age?
Exactly. When you pull straight back, you are squarely on the center line. You're betting your absolute consciousness on the fact that your neck muscles are faster than an elite athlete's fist.
And for a decade, he won that bet every single time.
He did. But a boxing style must be evaluated on its sustainability over a career. What happens when the Formula One engine loses a step? When age-related decay slowed his reflexes by even a fraction of a second? That pullback guaranteed catastrophic damage.
You're referring to his later fights.
Because he had no ingrained closed-loop fundamentals, he couldn't just turtle up behind a high guard. He absorbed horrific punishment later on. The brain trauma he took against Larry Holmes and Trevor Berbick was devastating. The blueprint failed him when his youth faded.
I hear that. But assuming a style must be designed for your late 30s to be considered sound feels a bit unfair. Ali built a system optimized for peak human performance. And a massive part of that, which we haven't even touched on yet, is how he redefined power generation.
You mean his lack of traditional power generation?
I mean prioritizing a different variable. Let's talk about the physics of a punch. Traditional power comes from the ground up, right? You push off the rear foot, rotate the hips, and transfer all your mass into your knuckles. It maximizes the M in the kinetic energy equation.
Right, for the listeners, kinetic energy is 1/2 mass times velocity squared.
We all remember high school physics, mass times velocity squared. Ali realized the squared part is the ultimate cheat code. If you double your mass by planting your feet, you double the power. But if you double your speed,
you quadruple the power.
Precisely. He didn't need to plant his feet and twist his hips. His whole training regimen supported this. Instead of lifting heavy weights to build bulky mass, he focused heavily on high-rep calisthenics. He famously chopped wood relentlessly.
To build rotational endurance.
Yes, and forearm snap, without adding the bulky muscle mass that slows down fast-twitch fibers. By focusing on speed over mass, he could deliver these high-impact, stinging combinations while remaining completely mobile. Velocity alone became his kinetic battering ram.
That is a phenomenal breakdown of the math. And I completely agree his speed was damaging. A fast, snapping punch causes lacerations, swelling, concussive shock. But, and this is a massive but, velocity alone lacks stopping power.
What do you mean by stopping power?
I mean the heavy pushing kinetic force, the mass that physically halts a heavier fighter's forward trajectory. Think of George Foreman. When these guys hit you, even if it hits your guard, it physically pushes your body backward.
Because of the sheer mass behind it.
Right. And because Ali couldn't naturally keep these relentless fighters at bay with sheer physical stopping power, he had to rely on compensations. Things that are rarely celebrated as part of his genius.
You mean his ring generalship?
I mean extreme psychological manipulation and grueling rule-bending clinch work. Let's look at the first Sonny Liston fight. Ali knew he didn't have the sheer mechanical power to intimidate Liston. Liston literally walked through punches.
So he went after his mind.
Exactly. At the pre-fight weigh-in, Ali faked absolute, uncontrollable hysteria. He screamed, he lunged at Liston, and he physically spiked his own pulse to 120 beats per minute. The commissioned doctors thought he was having a breakdown.
That story is incredible.
Listen, a man who feared no physical punch was terrified because he thought he was locked in a ring with a complete lunatic. And the kicker? An hour later in his dressing room, Ali's pulse was resting calmly at 54.
That's That's calculated theater. I love it.
It's brilliant theater, but it's a tactical compensation for a physical threat deficit. He had to convince Liston he was crazy because he couldn't convince him with a heavy right hand. And look at what happened when fighters finally closed the distance. Ali's inside game is vastly underrated, but it wasn't pretty technical boxing. It was a survivalist clinch game.
Survivalist feels a bit harsh.
He heavily utilized the collar tie. He would wrap his hand behind the opponent's neck and physically pull their head down. He'd place his right glove over their left bicep to pin their hook to their body. He leaned his entire heavyweight frame on shorter fighters to exhaust their legs.
Because he didn't fight well in the pocket.
Right, he lacked the tight inside defensive mechanics of a traditional peekaboo style. He couldn't slip and counter on the inside like Mike Tyson. He had to smother them. It highlights that his mid-range and inside mechanics were fundamentally missing.
But see, I don't view the clinch as a compensation for missing mechanics. I view it as a deep, intuitive understanding of leverage. The collar tie isn't just holding, it's a staple of grappling arts because it controls posture.
Wrestling arts? Sure. Not boxing.
But it works. By grabbing the back of the neck and bending them forward, he completely broke their kinetic chain. You just said traditional power comes from the ground up, rotating the hips. Well, you can't rotate your hips or transfer mass if your spine is bent over at a 90-degree angle. He neutralized textbook mechanics by understanding leverage better than his opponents did.
He understood leverage, but relying on excessive holding is a precarious way to define technical mastery. Referees warned him about it constantly. If a referee decided to strictly enforce the rules against holding and pulling the head down, Ali's entire interior defensive structure would have collapsed.
But they didn't enforce it, and he adapted perfectly to the reality of the ring he was in. I think that's where we find the synthesis of this debate. If we zoom out and look at his complete blueprint, his style was a pragmatic mastery of physics.
He certainly redefined what was possible.
He really did. By keeping a high center of gravity and straight legs, he preserved the metabolic energy to bounce for 15 rounds. By carrying his hands low, he obscured the launch pad of his jab and used his arms as counterweights. And by mastering velocity, he delivered devastating damage without ever anchoring his feet.
It's an amazing system when it works.
He didn't violate the rules of boxing. He expanded the definition of what technical soundness could be. He proved that if your understanding of physical invariance is deep enough, you can literally tear up the blueprint and write your own textbook.
His understanding of distance and timing was undoubtedly genius, but I maintain that his mechanics, viewed in isolation, were objectively flawed. Teaching them as sound to anyone else is a dangerous proposition.
Because it requires his specific gifts.
Yes, relying on reflexes over closed-loop fundamentals is a blueprint that only works if you happen to be born as Muhammad Ali. Dropping the hands, pulling straight back, these are structural errors. They left him exposed, and tacticians like Futch successfully exploited them.
And his lack of mass generation forced him into the clinch.
Exactly. He had to rely on psychological warfare and exhausting clinch tactics. Ali was a transcendent athlete, perhaps the greatest competitor to ever live, but his style was a high-wire act. And when the safety net of his youth vanished, the fall was severe.
And perhaps that is the ultimate paradox. To build a machine that outruns the artillery, you have to be willing to strip away the armor. We are left to marvel at the fact that the engine ran flawlessly for as long as it did, outpacing everyone else on the battlefield.
It forces us to ask whether combat sports evolve through strict adherence to proven fundamentals or through the athletic rebellion of the rule breakers. There's certainly much more to explore in the biomechanics of boxing's greatest icons.
Absolutely. We leave you, the listener, to decide when the textbook and the genius collide. Which one is actually telling the truth?
So what do you think of that? Do you think that Ali was actually a technically unsound fighter? I consider him, as well as everyone else, probably the greatest fighter ever. And you got to look at him as an innovator. He did things that no fighter has done. His style and all, in any weight division. So I can see what Malcolm and Ella were talking about. It makes sense. It's good for debate. But what did you think about that? Right now, we're going to move on to our music section of the program. We're going to have, first of all, Jade Mystique. And this one is going to be titled Easy Way Home, followed by, and I haven't put them on here in quite a while, Durian Funk. And they're going to sing Give me my go-go. So let's say that on the Shoulder Roll Virtual Boxing Podcast. Oh yeah, that got my feet jumping and my body just a popping there. And that was Dorian Funk bringing some DC sounds to Bangkok here with Give Me My Go-Go. Oh, that made me so happy. Maybe I'll do some more go-go tunes at some point. And before that, we did Easy Way Home by Jade Mystique. A little jazz for you. I hope you enjoyed those songs here on the Shoulder Roll Virtual Boxing Podcast. But we got to get out of here right now, make way for the next program. But again, before I go, I want to give a special shout out to Kenya, because we got new fans in Kenya that have been tuning in. I just want to thank you for listening in. It makes me feel so good when I hear folks all over the world, when I look at my analytics and see all the folks around the world listening in. And I actually got one person, and they're in a war zone in Ukraine and listen to the program. That's incredible. That makes me feel really good. That just warms my heart, because there are wars out here, as you know, Ukraine, you name it, in Gaza, you name it, but we got to do something to make it a better place. So do what you can in your community, wherever you are, help a young person, help a senior in need. Do what you can. Pick up trash, make this place a better world, because we're on this big blue ball together. So do what you can to make it better, and let's work to just bring justice wherever you are. But again, this is Greg Rashid, and I can get on a rant about that, but I won't right now. All I can say is go in love and go in peace. See you next time on the Shoulder Roll Virtual Boxing Podcast.
Thanks for tuning in. Please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this podcast. Please become a member at patreon.com under the title Ringside Fantasy Fights and News. See you next time.